Is there a prompt? There are 6 emergency exits.
Hello, everybody. This is Rod, your captain speaking. We are currently 30,000 feet in the air, and we haven't even left the airport. We just lit the joint. Just kidding, a little pilot humor there. We like to have fun. Our destination today is Casablanca, Morocco. So everyone, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for takeoff. We will be arriving in 6 hours.
7-footers gang, what is going on? We are back. I know we took a little break last week for you guys. Just a little technical difficulties to start the season. Nothing else.
I was like,
it's expected of me. They already know it's me.
Well, but do you want to explain to our audience what exactly happened?
There's construction behind my building or whatever, and they knocked out the power lines. I get emails, everything from Verizon, everything. Like, I got a package that day, and it was my new shirt that I was dying to get, and they told me that because their system was down, I couldn't get my package, and I almost cried in front of them. Like, that's how bad it was in these streets. I had to work from a restaurant/bar, and
yes, I did notice some wine near your laptop.
I mean, you know what? Hard times, calls for a little bit of a harder drink, and
Understood.
Your girl needed it. These things just happen, and of course, it's the day the season starts, the Bachelorette starts, everything, and I can't do anything. I had no cable, nothing. I texted Jarod. I was like, Jarod, and you guys know the heartbreak and heart palpitations, I should say, I have. I know Jarod's gonna literally kill me. So safe to say that's why you guys didn't get an episode last.
We could have done a live on location, right? Like you were live at some bar in Hoboken.
I was thinking about it a little bit, and then I was like, this is gonna be a shit show.
Yeah, it would have been too noisy. It would have been crazy.
Yeah. And it wasn't exactly the classiest bar, so there were some people in there making some noise.
Well, but you're here now, and the NBA season's here.
We're here now. The NBA season is here, guys. The 75th anniversary season, and it is a special one. And the NBA is actually going to be honoring different players on the list throughout the season. So that's also exciting. Forward to this is 125, guys. Welcome in, because we got a lot of things to cover here in terms of news, tidbits, things to start the season. And dare I say, are we already starting off with injuries? But we'll get there. Don't worry, we will get there. Let's talk about somebody. I didn't expect to see this is a situation that you never want to see. I'm talking about Suns owner Robert Sarver, accused of racism, sexism in a proposed story. So this is unexpected for this era that we're in for some reason, but it's also, it's just crazy to me. How deep you want to get into this, Jarod? How we want to dive in? Proposed story by ESPN.
Yeah. So just to peel the curtain back for our audience, right? Oftentimes stories like this are in the works and in the can and are ready to print, so to speak. And the reason why they don't come out or they're delayed or whatever, it's because of the accusations and allegations being addressed need to be quadruple checked, right? To make sure that they are legit, because these are serious accusations and allegations being levied against Robert Sarver. Mm-hmm. Given whom he is and what we know about him, those of us in and around the NBA, it's not surprising. He is one of these people who, is a rich billionaire kind of person who tends to be very brash and crass and off color at best, at worst, possibly all these other things, right? At True Hoop, Henry, our boss, published a story about Robert Sarver delivering a roast at the wake/funeral of one of his business partners. And okay, it's a roast, so at a roast, you tend to get, pretty grimy with stories. But I mean, this guy was, getting pretty graphic with sexual innuendo and various things. So if this is in fact true, it would not be surprising. Robert Sarver does not have the greatest reputation out there. So I'm not too surprised. So that's about the extent I'm willing to go into it. We will know more if and when this story comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, again, to clarify, there was, reports and rumblings of a massive story being prepared that is set to be released of all of these allegations. So we shall see. For now, he denies them. So again, we'll follow this for you guys and let you guys know. But let's move on to another serious story happening in the NBA that has flooded into society per se and outside of the league per se, and that is at the Nets home opener. There were massive protests, and you were there, Jarod. I was not, but just from the videos, it looked like a massive crowd, and that can get frightening sometimes. You never know what's going on, and these protests were actually in favor of Kyrie Irving, and protesters were saying, quote, "No vaccine mandate, stand with Kyrie." This is exactly what Kyrie said he didn't want to happen, to be a distraction. So now we have protesters outside of Barclays charging the doors. What happened? You were there. So
Yeah.
there's no better person to fill in the blanks.
So the Nets played the Hornets in their home opener on Sunday, as you said. That game was set to tip at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, local time here in New York. I usually get to the arena about 2 hours, maybe sometimes 2.5 hours before tip. So I got there sometime around 2 o'clock. So got inside, there was nothing going on that I saw. Also to again give our audience more of an inside peek. The protest was happening at the front entrance of the Barclays Center. The media entrance is on the side, right? So, but when I came up the escalator out of the subway to the front entrance, none of that was going on at the time. I headed straight down the side to the media entrance and got inside. So I was just doing my normal pregame thing. And then I was on Twitter and I was like, what? There's protest. What's happening? Because there were other reporters who were around and who were supposed to be at the game who were tweeting out that they were having some trouble getting inside, because at some point the Barclays Center did sort of lock the building down because some of those protesters rushed past the barricades and got up to the front doors. And there was a heavy police presence that I noticed when I came up out of the subway at around 2 o'clock that afternoon. And what's so bizarre about this story, and it's such a sad state of affairs of where we are as a nation, Jenna, was the convergence of people that were quote unquote in support of Kyrie. You had people with Black Lives Matter shirts and people who support the Black Lives Matter movement, in addition to bad faith actors and people who are in the MAGA movement, all standing together saying we support Kyrie, when in fact, in reality, those two groups of people disagree about literally everything. And it's just, this is the absurdity that we live in 2021, that you literally have MAGA and Black Lives Matter people marching and chanting together in favor of Kyrie because of the New York City vaccine mandate. And, Kyrie's whole thing about, I don't want to be a distraction. My guy, yeah, well, that's what you're going to be, at least outside, right? Fortunately, inside, nothing happened. There were no chants, no anything. I mean, business went on as usual. I'll be curious to see if this continues throughout the course of the season. But it was, from the videos and everything, because again, I was inside. Now, at that point, I came out of my seat and out of media row and went towards the front, through inside the building, and there was a heavy police presence, of course. And by then, you saw flags and people chanting outside. But by then, the police had gotten it under control. And it's just, this is where we are, the theater of the absurd. Like this is America in 2021, and the fact that Kyrie Irving's refusal to abide by the New York City mandate is what brings together these particular two disparate groups of people. Again, sad commentary on where we are as a society.
Completely agreed. Have the Brooklyn Nets or Kyrie himself, I don't think either have addressed it directly, correct?
Kyrie did not address it correctly. The Nets did not. Barclays Center, however, put out a statement saying, for a brief moment, Barclays Center did close its doors while we tried to get control of the situation. And then once we did, the game tipped off as usual, and it sure did. Like, again, if you were off of the internet and just inside the building, you'd have no idea what was going on out there. It wasn't even like, there was a lot of scuttlebutt and people were like, oh my God, you hear what's happening? Like, nothing. Like, business went on as usual inside the confines of the Barclays Center. Or, as Kevin Durant calls it, the Clays.
The Clays. Oh, man. That just, that just made me like him. It did. And like, it just the glaze. That's good. That's good. That's good. I like that. Clever, Kev.
Clever, Kev.
Clever, Kev. Yeah, but real quick, back to that situation. That's I just can't even believe we're here at this point. That's all I'll say. Interesting that he hasn't addressed it directly because he seems to want to be ahead of the situation and the narrative that his name controls. So very interested to see what his next move will be and what is going on. Also, did you see that, not to turn this into a funny thing at all, but I'm just saying this is the height that it's reached. SNL did a skit.
Oh, really? I didn't see it.
And
Wow.
Kyrie. Yeah. I'll send it to you. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So let's take a major shift away from the serious topics because let's get into some ball. It's the 75th season. Let's go. Let's talk about it. So far, opening night was last week, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. But what surprised us so far this season, Jarod? A lot of things. A lot of young guys coming out of the woodwork, coming out hot. A little forewarned injuries, maybe, reminders of last season. Again, let's talk about two dumpster fires that have the best record in the league right now. I'm talking about the 4-0 Bulls since 96, okay? They are 4-0 since the 96 season, and the Hornets, who are 3-0 for the first time ever.
3-1. They lost last night in OT to the Celtics.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they did come up. They had that glory moment for 1 second. They did. But these two teams are showing out, and the Bulls are the most surprising and the most intriguing because they have an extremely different roster, and they have pieces that are actually promising in DeMar DeRozan, in Lonzo Ball, and it's a young team. Talk to me about these Bulls. Are we going to Chi-Town?
Pump the brakes. Slow down. Look, good on the Bulls, right? Coming out 4-0, that's excellent. Let's also be clear about something. 2 of those wins were against the Detroit Pistons, who were a bottom-feeding team without their number 1 pick, Cade Cunningham. So let's not, lose our minds about how good the Bulls are. Now, when they start playing some real serious competition and they continue to win, then we'll talk. But look, the Bulls, as we know, and we talked about in our season preview episode, Jenna, they've gone all in on we're making the playoffs this year, right? That's what all those moves are about. Getting Lonzo, getting DeMar. We talked about Zach LaVine in his summer with the Olympic team and winning gold medal, and how that often buoys players and gets them to bring their game up to another level when they're around all those excellent players like Kevin Durant, etc., right? So, yeah, I expect the Bulls to play hard and be an excellent team. What worries me about them is they're not particularly deep. So an injury or two, which, I'm not predicting it, but they happen in a season, that could hurt them. But they're playing hard. They're competing. You got to like what Billy Donovan's doing there, and then the new regime in the front office. But in terms of surprises for me, Jenna, it's really the young guys asserting themselves as, no, we're here. It's not like, the veterans are done. We're not saying that. But young guys are really no, we're for real. Ja Morant has been outstanding in year 3. And again, it's early. Let's not lose our minds. Only 3 games, but he's been on fire. The Grizzlies look fantastic, 2-1. We are seeing excellent play by young players, and I like to see that, right? The future of the league is bright. So that's one thing that stood out to me.
I completely agree. The future of the league looks so bright, not only because of the talent, but do you notice, really, if we take a step back, the guys that are coming in, and I'm, of course, leading with Jalen Green to start, their confidence is at an all-time high. It is something that you can't even teach. It's actually insane to me just because, the persona's shifted. Usually when you come in the league, you're never like that. You're timid, you're this, you're that. There's always, of course, the guys that are showing out. Yes, Jalen Green was the number 2 pick, but you don't see Cade Cunningham coming up here like Jalen Green is, slamming down dunks, reaching milestones that MJ reached already. But the attitudes are different.
For sure.
I guess it's the evolution or a different era that we're in, or maybe because they're these, what is it, Gen Z or something that they're calling
I don't even know.
themselves
I don't
now?
even know what they are. But no,
Yeah,
you're right. They're
I mean,
super confident. I mean, even a guy like Anthony Edwards, year two. I mean, he is just like showing out, like doing his thing, like trying to declare himself as, look, we got Karl Anthony Towns. Maybe he thinks. I mean, I know he does. Thinks of himself as, I can be the number 2 building piece, a cornerstone of this franchise. So it's great to see the young guys. The other thing that's not surprising me, but something I'm keeping an eye on is the rule changes and the foul calls. A lot of, I mean, it's early again, small sample size. We're like barely a week into the season. But free throw rates for some players are down. But I just think that for a lot of players, they're still working themselves back into shape. They're not quite fully there yet. I mean, let's remember, Jenna, this is the part of the third season we have entered within 1 calendar year, right? In the past 12 months, we have played parts of 3 NBA seasons. That's insane. Like,
when you put it like that, it just hurts my soul.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. It is insane, right? We had to finish the bubble season after the delay when the COVID-19 pandemic was at its height. The next season followed up immediately after, and it concluded late this summer, Olympics, and now we're back again on calendar. It's just a lot of basketball. And so that, as you know, Jenna, and the injuries, that worries me. Like, particularly the old guys. And we'll talk about them in a bit, but the older players, that is worrying me. Listen, those guys, it's not just that they're older. They're older and they have a lot of miles in their body. It's not like they're just 35 and they haven't been doing anything their whole lives. They're 35 and they've also been having deep playoff runs their entire career. That's a lot of miles on those tires.
Heck yeah. I would say that the Warriors are surprising me, but they're not. They're looking great. So
you know what's so interesting about the Warriors, Jenna? The reverse has almost happened for them, right? And what I mean by that is, so they lose they lose in the finals the year that KD blows out his Achilles and Clay gets hurt, right? The next season is the COVID season. But what happens early in that season? Steph breaks his wrist. He's out the rest of the year, right? And he that happened early. Okay. So in essence, after a 3 titles in 5-year run for the Warriors and all that late basketball, he had a whole year off essentially, right? Because he was hurt. The next year, last season, the Warriors did not make the playoffs, right? So we had another longer offseason to recover. So it's kind of no surprise that he's looking great coming out, right? Because he's kind of had a bit of a rest period after going to 5 straight finals, right? That was, because again, playing basketball into late June every year is taxing on your body. So essentially having 2 years off to recover after that, he's looking stronger, more fit. That's a good thing. You work in the younger players around them who've gotten better, and then the hope is that when Clay comes back, this is the makings of a team that could challenge in the Western Conference. Now, it is early season. I'm not jumping on board with that yet, Jenna. Like, I need to see more first. Yeah, they look pretty good, but I still need to see more. And again, as I said before, I'm not sure what Clay is going to be when he comes back. Sure. I mean, everyone's like, oh, look at Kevin Durant. Okay, but they're not the same person, right? Like, Clay could be fine. He could not be. I want to see what it looks like when they come back, but there's definitely reason for optimism if you're a Warriors fan.
I completely agree. We shall see. I mean, again, Steph is going off per usual, but again, good point to noting that they have had a lot more rest than others. So again, leg up. We shall see. Let's talk about some teams and players that are having uncharacteristic slow starts, and should we be worried? This is interesting because 2 of the teams are teams that everybody has predicted will be in the finals, the Nets and Lakers. And of course, we have Portland in there that's struggling with a 1-2 record, same as Lakers 1-2 to start off. Nets 2-2, little slow start there without Kyrie Irving, beefing up the narratives that they can't do it without him. So a lot to unpack here. But let's kick it off and start with the Lakers, just because we're going to combine this with the LeBron James scare injury. when he collided with Grizzlies forward Desmond Bane, and that right leg, the same right leg that he struggled in with that ankle that kept him out last season, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all blending in together for me. But yeah, so he's getting around the clock treatment, says he's sore. He's hoping to play sooner than later, but he said the first thing he started thinking was not again. That like PTSD rolled back in his head. Obviously, I teared up because that's what I do.
Because you're a LeBron James propagandist.
We are literally 2 episodes into the new season, and this is the slander that I am subjected to. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay.
Look,
I can take it this season. Why? Because we have Melo.
We're gonna get some Melo. This just in, by the way. LeBron James will not play tonight against the. Look at that. We're simpatico. Look.
Roll me a red wine.
Jenna, if I'm a Lakers fan, I'm concerned. Look, what do I always say? What is the best predictor of future injury? Previous injury.
Yes, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Every year so far that LeBron has been a Laker, and we are now in his, 4th season as a Laker?
Uh-huh.
He's been injured every year, right? Every year he's had some kind of injury that's caused him to miss time. Now, remember, this is someone who, in his peak in Miami in his Cleveland days, Iron Man, right? Not a whole lot of not a lot of injuries to speak of. The older you get, this is what happens. It's the same leg as last year. Again, biggest predictor of future injury, prior injury. He is not getting younger. Yes, I understand he spends $1 million a year in his body. All of that is all well and true and good. And that money that he spends and the way it is finely tuned allows him to slow the process that will affect a normal person at a much more normal rate, right? But there's a reason why we say Father Time remains undefeated. It's because you cannot stop time, right? Time continues to march forward. So at some point, there's a reason why leagues like the NBA or whatever, like these high-level contact sports are not dominated by players in their late 30s and early 40s. It's just, that's not a thing. Who dominates the league? People in their 20s, right? Well, there's a reason for that, right? Young legs, fresh legs tend to work better than older legs, particularly older legs and older joints with tons of miles on them. LeBron James' entire career, for the most part, except the early Cleveland years, year 1, year 2, he's played late into the playoffs his entire career. That is a lot. The most minutes in the history of it's a lot, man. And at that level,
condensed seasons,
and
too.
These 3 seasons being sandwiched together and condensed, it's affecting the older guys much more than it is affecting the younger guys. And so, yeah, the Lakers are going to have to rely on Malik Monk and Talon Horton-Tucker, who is out right now, and their young guys to really sort of lead, play those spot minutes and Anthony Davis, because he's a young guy, right? But, what does Charles say about Anthony Davis all the time? Leads the league in heading to the locker room, right? Or he calls them street clothes. I mean, look, man, he has got to be the guy who plays 75, 70 whatever games and is like the dominant force on both ends that allows LeBron to rest throughout the 82-game season so that he is at his best for the games that matter, which are the 16 you need to win the championship. Russell Westbrook off to a slow start. Now he says, every year I'm off to a slow. That's true. That is what Russ does. But again, Russ is another one who is older. Like, you're not 24 or 25. And these are the things that it will affect you. And the same thing's happening in Brooklyn to a certain extent. The Nets are a 2-2 start. The only player on that team who looks like he's ready for this season is Durant. Everybody else, I don't know where they're at. And James Harden's a big reason for it.
I was just going to say.
Harden.
Yeah.
And he said something interesting after Sunday's game. He said, I'm working on getting my confidence back. When have you ever heard James Harden say anything about lacking confidence and waiting to get it back? And this is tied to that hamstring injury he suffered last year. Really the first major injury he's had in his basketball career. And that's what it's about, because what's happening in isolation, Jenna, is he's not able to cook guys one-on-one. The burst and the explosion is not there. And James is also someone who, let's be honest, is not a workout warrior, right? He's not a guy in the offseason that's in the gym, constantly like fine-tuning his body. And that's, James likes to live the life in the offseason and do his thing, rightfully so. But we all know this. The things we used to do when we were 18, 19, 20, 21 are a lot harder when we're 30, 31, 32, right? The body doesn't respond and recover as quick. It is no different for high-performance athletes. And so you must change the way you do things, right? Your off season is critical. The preparation to make sure you are ready. And he is not ready right now. He's still working his way back into shape. And it's going to be a struggle. So, Kevin Durant's really kind of on an island right now, holding down the fort for that team.
Yeah, I completely agree. He hasn't been to the line as much. And of course, that is due to the new rules.
Some of it, right? Most of it is because he doesn't have the explosion and he can't get by guys as quickly, right? That's part of it. And the refs are being a little better about the foul calling at the rim, like the contact in the lane. Because the thing people are always like, the new foul rules. James Harden's the guy that they're targeting. Like, if you watch, James Harden isn't the jump into players. That's not his game. His game is a start game. I've said this numerous times before. He is number one in the NBA in terms of deceleration time. He and Luka Doncic are the best at getting their body to stop from a fast position than anyone in the league, by far. Their deceleration ability is better than anyone in the league. And that's part of his game, right? The ability to start on a dime, that causes fouls, causes guys to reach, right? Now, at the rim, they're not calling that as much, right? When he's leading in with his own and holding the ball out and trying to initiate the contact, they're not calling that on him. And, that's going to take some time for him to work through and for the refs to work through. We'll see. But that's an interesting point that you brought up, Jenna, because free throw rate's big. Those are free points, all right? James Harden's someone who's been to the line in some seasons 10 times a game. And if he's down to 3 or less than 3 a game, that ain't good. They got to get those free points.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, the definite elephant in the room is Harden. He is the one that needs to make at least Irving, who points to with him there. So again, the crucial absence of his is really like weighing on me more and more. At first, I was like, I think that maybe they can do this, and now I'm like, well, James Harden comes to the season per usual, not in shape, so it's fine. It's fine. And then that makes me think about, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm like, yo, homie, like, get it together. Like, are you kidding me right now? I got my other boy over here who dragged my ass to Brooklyn, and he ain't even here. You're not going to deal with your out of shape ass? I'm sorry. I know Kevin Durant can do it all, but there's got to be a mental point where you say, okay, like, what's going on? Like, now I'm feeling a little bit disrespected.
Well, and to your point, Jenna, for the Nets, that's something that head coach Steve Nash has got to monitor, because if Durant's got to play heavy minutes early in the season just to keep this team afloat, what is that going to mean for later in the season? Again, the 16 games that matter. For Brooklyn, it's not about the 82 games. It's about the 16. And you want those guys to be at their best at the 16, not the 82. And remember, he is still only a year off of, or 2 years off of Achilles surgery, right? Like, this guy still needs to monitor his minutes and can't be out here taking on that heavy load, particularly after the heavy load he carried in that second round playoff series against the Bucks and the Olympics. Like, they're going to have to be monitoring and definitely find out ways to build in some rest and nights off for him. Because again, it ain't about the 82. This group came here to win a championship. So it's about those 16 games.
Heck yeah, they did. Last but not least, real quick, we'll mention the Trailblazers because they got a 1-2 record under new head coach Chauncey Billups, who called their latest loss to the Clippers embarrassing. And I shouldn't even call it a loss. They got smacked by 30 points. And without the Kawhi Clippers. So what are your thoughts about this? Just because, again, the slander is going to come early on when people start hitting Dame with, oh, you chose to stay for this, And again, I already know that you aren't the biggest fan of this backcourt. in him and CJ.
Yeah, and it's mainly because in the playoffs, I think that their defensive shortcomings really get exposed, and their size, right? Small backcourts get picked on a ton, and they do. I mean, Dame's 6 foot barely, CJ's 6'2". I mean, small backcourts get picked on in the postseason, and their size limits them in certain respects. But look, Dame's off to a slow start, shooting the three. CJ's playing well, which is great for them. Look, it is. Again, let's not losing our minds. It's only 3 games in. But Dame said he wants to give new head coach Chauncey Billups a shot and see what's there. But Jenna, like this roster, I mean, it ain't any better than any of the rosters they've had in the past, right? It's still about what can
upgrade.
Right. It's still about what can Dame and CJ do, right? That's still what it is. And sure, those guys are electric and great, but I just Dame's whole point is about winning. Sorry, this is not this team is not a winning team. I mean, in terms of the championship, that's not a contender. I mean, they're gonna fight to be in the playoffs, and okay. So is that really what you stuck around for? All that? All right, cool. We'll see.
Oh my God, you cracked me.
I mean, I'm just keeping it 100, man.
Hey, I love it. I love to hear it. Love to see it. All right, let's move on to the bold and the beautiful happening in Philadelphia. That would be Ben Simmons and the Sixers. That was the first soap opera that came to my mind, except a couple others now. But
Days of Our Lives,
Oh, yep, Days of Our Lives, General Hospital. You know how I roll. But let's talk about this saga here because it's slowed down a little bit in the news. But the latest is that Ben is apparently working with the team. The team is working with him. And he said that he's not mentally ready to return. And the team has supported him publicly. The players have. Joel Embiid mentioned that Simmons is their brother on the Sixers opening night, 2 days after he said he didn't care about him anymore. And yeah, so again, Simmons hasn't really addressed anything directly around the public, hasn't met with media, nothing. But the newest news in the contractual details, I guess we could say, is that apparently ESPN reports that the Sixers are no longer fining him for missed practices or games. So that's interesting. But that also comes after, he said that he was having some mental health issues. So,
or he's not mentally in the right frame of mind to participate. And that's the thing. It's a very fuzzy area, right? Because, mental health could be seen as a shield in one instance. And it's also something we want to take seriously. So I don't know what's going on in Ben's, as far as his mental health. What I do know is this. Sixers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, went on Philadelphia local radio and said, look, we are not trading this guy unless we get difference maker back in return. He has been very clear and adamant about that. And one of the quotes that he said was, would you rather remove a perceived problem or increase your odds of winning in the playoffs? And this is where Daryl, for me, where I have issues with him. I think he's a phenomenal GM, but Daryl gets the people part of this business wrong often. Like, Joel can say whatever he wants out on the floor. This is our brother. We support him, blah, blah, blah. Ben did address Joel and some of his teammates last week. But, this is an ugly situation. And the bottom line is, by December 15th, there'll be a whole crop of new players available to be traded who couldn't have been traded earlier because they had just signed deals. We'll see what's available and on the table. The reality of all of this is that Ben Simmons does not want to play for the 76ers at all. And Daryl Morey does not want to move him unless he gets back a star in return. How long can he wait it out? He said, I'm willing to wait 4 years because that's how long Ben has left on his contract. The organization and the city cannot do this for 4 more years. So that won't happen. We'll see. We'll see what things look like come December. Who knows? Maybe the Blazers are 2-12 in December or whatever. And it's like, oh, we gotta, Dame's ready. Get off this sinking ship. Or whatever the situation is. Who knows? We shall see. But look, everyone's trying to put a nice face on it, but it's an ugly, ugly situation that really, frankly, I would love to have resolved sooner rather than later. And let's get back to actual basketball.
Yeah, because in the end, this team is only suffering. I'm sorry, but the human aspect of it, if I'm on this team and I got to see this BS every single day. I'm not talking about the mental aspect of it. I'm talking about seeing my team's name in the news every day, question marks, chemistry issues, this and that, whether it be rumors or true. I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much you could take at this point, So, yeah, we'll see about that. Definitely a dicey situation, but maybe we'll get a Christmas trade. You never know.
Never know.
We're rooting for you, Philly. We're rooting for you. Let's get to a quick little tidbits and notes here, because my guy,
oh God,
Carmelo Anthony. I mean, he's a Laker now, strolls in the first couple games, just decides to be 9th all time on the NBA's scoring list, to pass Hall of Famer Moses Malone for the 9th spot. It's just beautiful.
Oh my God.
Jarod.
Oh my God. What are we doing
I think he
here?
dropped 30 in that game?
No, 27 or 28. Listen, Melo had a great game. Kudos to Melo, by the way. 9th all-time in scoring. Listen, here's one thing we know about Carmelo Anthony. Dude is one of the great bucket getters of all time in the history of this game. And this game has had elite bucket makers, as we know, as the great Bill Russell said in that Uncle Drew commercial. What these young kids need to understand is this game is and always will be about getting buckets. That's what fans, casual, whomever, they love buckets. That's what we like to see, is buckets. And Melo is one of the greatest ever at doing it, clearly, as he moves into the top 10 all-time, 9th. It's a wonderful accomplishment. Kudos to Melo. You know, he was out of the league a few years ago. People thought he was washed. Clearly, he still has things to offer. But again, if you're a Los Angeles Lakers fan, enjoy these moments as they happen. But do not expect them as, this is something that's going to be continuous or something we can rely on. Sure, every once in a while he'll turn back the clock and do something like this. More often than not, probably not.
Talk about raining on a damn parade.
Again, I'm just keeping it real. But kudos to Melo, though.
You're
Literally,
keeping
kudos.
It 100. What I will say is the documentary or series that is going to come out on this, that's going to follow.
Well, wait. You're getting some technical difficulties there. I don't know what's happening with your Wi-Fi, but you are like in frozen freeze frame. Oh, you're back now. Oh, frozen freeze frame again. Folks, this is the beauty of doing stuff over Wi-Fi. Is
it good now?
You're good now.
Good now?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew as soon as you said it switched over to Ariel's.
Switched over to Ariel's?
It always does that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it always does that. It goes between mine and Ariel's. God damn it, where was I?
Melo, look, kudos to Melo.
Yeah, no, that's all I was saying was, again, I ruin everything, but all I was saying was the documentary or series about Melo's journey is going to be so good, especially from the part where he was out of the league until he became a Laker, the conversation with LeBron. I mean, could you imagine the Lakers locker room right now between LeBron's camera crew, Melo's camera crew, Rondo's presumed camera crew, and Westbrook's, even though he just popped out a documentary? They're probably all running into each other and getting lost.
Hollywood.
They should make
Hollywood.
one big one.
Hollywood. That's
it.
The Lakers are so Hollywood. So Hollywood.
The amount of people that the Lakers probably have to employ extra as opposed to other teams like the Thunder and the Bucks is out of control, because you have to handle so many stars and different types of things in that Hollywood aspect. But yeah, gotta love it. Purple and gold for life.
Oh boy.
Let's go down
for
to
life.
another.
Man, 5 years ago you were a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. Now it's purple and gold for life. Hilarious. I love it.
You know what? That was actually funny.
Just keeping it real, man. Keeping it real.
You always do.
Listen, man. You are a LeBron stan. Listen, you got to stand for your guy. I get it.
Thank you for supporting my journey. Let's move on to another member of this friendship group, banana boat crew, whatever you want to call it. Technically, Melo claims he's not a part of it. I say he is. But anyway, Chris Paul, he became the first player in the NBA history to have 20,000 career points and 10,000 career assists. I mean, the point guard reigns supreme once again. Jarod, I mean, what else do we have to say about this man?
I mean, this is, Chris Paul, unfortunately, because he doesn't have a championship ring, and you know about rings culture and all that ridiculousness. Right, Z's, because people are stupid. Because, they somehow think of championships as individual awards, even though, as I say all the time, you don't win titles by yourself. You need teams. That's how they work.
Big facts.
Chris is one of the great point guards of all time, obviously. A first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously one of the NBA's 75 greatest players of all time. A point guard for generations, right? In that old school sense, right? A true floor general, someone who Jenna makes the most out of his size. Chris is 6 foot on a good day in his shoes, and one of the smallest guys in the league. And to carve out this kind of career with 20,000 points, 10,000 career assists, and again, it's still going. He went to the finals last year with the Phoenix Suns. Kudos, man. He's been rookie of the year. Like, he's been all NBA multiple times. I mean, an all-star multiple. I mean, he is an assist champion, steals champ. I mean, he's done it all in this league. The only thing he hasn't done is win the big one, but that's a team thing, right? Like, and he had a shot last year, and in many ways, I know that stung for him because of the age he's at now, and the chances of making it back and getting there it's hard to win in this league. You always talk about if players came along at a different time, like he came along in the LeBron era, like it's unfortunate, right? It's like guys that came along in the Jordan era. It's like, it's tough when you have those all-time greats in your era who, and Chris is an all-time great, but those like generational top 5 GOAT type of players, it's hard to get past them. It just is. It
is, and especially with this jump from going to the finals last season to this year, the league is completely different now. I mean, you could argue that that's the case every year. However, how many guys are back from injury? I mean, the fact that in one season alone, you had, KD out, Clay out. I mean,
Steph was out.
Perennial stars. Yeah, like that. Those are difference makers right there in records and so on. I mean, it could be the explanation for certain teams' leaps, but we don't have all the time. But you did mention really quick the NBA's 75th anniversary list, which we're not going to jump too much into the, I hate to use Jarod's word, but propaganda of it. But real quick, I mean, there were some notable names that were left off, and naming to start Klay Thompson, just because he is the one that seemed to express the most emotion about being left off the list, took to Instagram, complained on there. But yeah, I mean, you got guys on the list, and then you got guys not on the list like Tracy McGrady, Tony Parker, Dwight Howard.
Dwight Howard was a big one. That was a big one.
Bosh. Yeah,
I mean,
it's Mutombo, Ginobili, but Dwight Howard. Yeah.
Dwight Howard was, I think, one of the biggest snubs. Look, this is what the NBA wanted to do with this. They wanted this conversation on Twitter, everybody to yell and get angry, and I think, and this is no disrespect to any of those players of that era, but we have to stop doing these player comparisons over eras, because it's just it's not apples to apples. In the 1950s, when there were 8 teams in the league, 8. Okay, we have 30 teams now. The quality and level of competition is so much higher and better now than it was then. And that's not to say that the guys who were the best back then weren't great at basketball, but it is unequivocally true that pick a player from this era, Jaron Jackson Jr. is a better athlete than anyone who played in the 1950s. Right? Like, it's just true. Yeah, I mean, he just is. Right? And he is one person. Right? Think about this league full of unicorns and athletes. Your John Collinses, your Giannis's, like Kevin Durant. These people who, if you drop them off in the 50s, they'd be like, what are you? This, like, you're an alien. What are you doing here? Like, it would be crazy. Yeah. So we really need to start doing a demarcation thing where we say, okay, from this period, and we're going to make that like legends, historical, and just take them away and start really reshaping what we're talking about when we say basketball in the modern era, right? Because it's just too difficult to do. It's way too hard. And you're going to have people on lists that, probably shouldn't be there, right? Let's be honest, right? Again, I don't want to discount his championships or whatever, but you're trying to compare Bob Cousy to Chris Paul. I mean, what are we talking about here? What even is that? You know what I mean? Okay, Kuzi won.
Chaos.
Kuzi won a bunch of titles again in an 8-team league. Sure. It's not apples to apples, right? So I just think that when the NBA does this again in 25 years, that NBA 100 list, they're gonna have to do some real trimming of. All right, we are only doing it from this period onward. Modern. Everyone who's on that old list, it's grandfathered in. They're legends of the game, whatever you want to do, but. You have to start looking at this stuff differently because comparing these players across eras is just it's a fool's errand.
Oh, a fool's errand. Putting that in my pocket for later. All right, before we head out, now that we've seen a couple games real quick, what's the team that you're
paying attention to the most?
Yeah. What are you liking?
A few teams. I'm watching Denver. I love my Grizzlies. I'm loving what those Grizzlies are doing. That game against the Lakers. Oh man, it went down to the wire. It was wonderful. Ja's playing well. Jaron's had a few good games. I love those Grizzlies. The Nuggets I mentioned. I'm watching the Hawks, man. Again, the best young core in the league. They just listen. I'll say this: the Nets screw around. Philly screws around, and the Hawks will find themselves in that top 3. And the other team that I'm watching, minus their blowout loss to the Miami Heat, which in many ways happened because they put all their energy into their opening night ring ceremony game. They wanted to show the Nets that they were serious. We're the defending champs. I'm watching the Milwaukee Bucks, Jenna. Guess what? Things are quiet in Milwaukee. No drama. Ain't nobody thinking about us. There's, as I said it a million times, their superstar is now 26 years old. He is just entering his prime. He ain't 30-something like these other dudes we're talking about.
I think he just turned 26.
Just turned 26, I believe. And if not, whatever. If he turns 27, who cares? He's still young.
I think he just turned, yeah.
And Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton are in their 30, 31. Jenna, the Bucks could be the NBA's next dynasty. They could. They have everything you need.
I just got the chills.
They could be.
Thinking about that.
Because here's the thing, as I said before, who in the league are they actually afraid of?
You're right.
Nobody.
Now that I think
They
about
won the title. The monkey is off their back. Bud ain't got to worry about, I'm going to lose my job. People think I can't. All that stuff.
God.
Giannis is going to leave. He signed his extension. Everybody's signed up. What are they worried about?
It's a good point that you make, too. Their superstar, the MVP, the
Defensive Player of the Year, all that.
Yeah. He's 26. Wow. And then when you go on to every other team,
their stars are in their 30s and injury prone.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man.
Could go to Philly, but Joel Embiid's injury prone.
Sure. And we don't know what's going to happen with Ben Simmons.
Uh-huh.
And again, and if they don't,
that's a really good point.
And without Ben Simmons on that team, they're not a championship contender. As much as Ben has his issues, and we know what they are, you take him off that team, and they're not as good. They just aren't. So yeah, man, no. Milwaukee whistling away out in Milwaukee right now. Everyone's forgotten about us. Cool, we're good.
I saw somebody tweet the other day. I can't remember which team it was, but it was looks like whatever team is looking to recruit Ben Simmons hard, they can't shoot for shit. And I was like,
jokes.
I was like, you guys are savages here.
The jokes just write themselves. But anyway, I'm excited, Jenna. This NBA season's been great to start. We got some national games tonight, right? Philly and the Knicks is the first game. What's the second game tonight on ESPN? Nuggets, maybe?
That's Denver, yeah. Denver and Jazz?
Denver, Utah? Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Because Utah's another one. Utah's my pick to come out of the West, so we'll see. And you know I love Denver. And PJ off to a little bit of a slow start, but again, only 3 games in. We'll see.
I can't wait. Tell them where they can find us, Jarod.
As always, folks, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. We are on Twitter at 7footerspod, on Instagram at 7footerspodcast, at JS Hector, at Jenna Lemoncelli. And until next week, enjoy the games. Peace.
Peace.
Spent a couple years out here with these raps, trying to have a plan that we made come true. Applied to some jobs, but I ain't hit back. I don't wanna trap, what's a man gon' do? Chevy told me come